All right, looks like we are good to go. There we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Innovation Hub's Innovate. Try that again. It's been a long day. Innovation Hub's Grant Informational Webinar. I see a lot of familiar faces from the webinar we just did on the Entrepreneurial Programmatic Support Grant. So welcome back to those folks. This grant is going to be very similar to that grant in a lot of the technical aspects, with some differences in language for physical infrastructure as opposed to programs and services. So most of the information will be the same with some slight tweaks. Again, my name is Michael Prosnitz. I'm a Senior Economic Development Coordinator with the Technology and Innovation Office at the New Mexico Economic Development Department, and I am joined by my Associate Director, Lindsay Humphreys. All right. Yeah, so the presentation itself will take about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will leave the rest of the time, which is about 45 minutes, for questions at the end. If you have any questions during the presentation, we're going to ask that you hold them till afterwards. You can go ahead and put them in the chat or raise your hands during the presentation, and we'll get to them in the order that we receive them, the best that we can. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So, like I mentioned, this is an informational webinar for the Innovation Hubs grant from the Technology and Innovation Office for the New Mexico Economic Development Department. There have been, as I mentioned in the previous grant webinar, there were some changes to the grant manual for that grant. Those do not carry over to this grant. So this grant has not been updated as of Friday. It is the same as from when it was originally put out on Monday. So the goal of this grant is to provide non-dilutive funds to proposals for physical infrastructure that support the development, expansion, or improvement of physical spaces or facilities that enable or foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology commercialization. So for this grant, really think about physical infrastructure and facilities, as opposed to the previous grant, which was focused on programs and services. Similar to the last grant, proposals have to be within one of our priority sectors, at least one, those being aerospace, biosciences, advanced computing, and advanced energy. All right, eligibility is slightly different from the last grant. You have to be headquartered in New Mexico to be eligible, and you must have a New Mexico CRS tax ID, a physical New Mexico address, and a federal EIN number to be eligible. You must also be in good standing with the state of New Mexico, and that also includes a upload of a letter of good standing from the Taxation and Revenue Department. Again, you must align with one of or more of TO's priority sectors. And for the proposal, you must include planned or existing entities, the proposal must include planned or existing entities with a physical presence in New Mexico that support, enable, accelerate, or incubate technology innovation through services and facilities used by multiple clients, partners, or stakeholders. So again, difference in language here being facilities. You also must support innovation, entrepreneurship, and or technology commercialization through shared spaces, equipment, and or collaborative environments that drive economic growth in New Mexico. Applicants may request any amount of up to 2.5 million, but should only request what is needed to successfully complete the proposed work. The same amount from the previous grant, each of 2.5 million for a total of 5 million for this funding total. All work must be completed within 12 months of the grant agreement execution, and 50% of the funds will be dispersed upon the start date of the grant, with an additional 50% being dispersed upon meeting previously agreed upon milestones. Those milestones will be determined based upon what you submit in your application and a conversation with our office of what's reasonable as a kind of halfway point given your proposed milestones. For funding use, we'll just cover what the ineligible funding use is, which is awards may not be used for alcohol, drugs, or any illegal activities or substances, or for any costs not specific to completion of the proposal scope of work. So anything outside of that one restriction is eligible, as long as it serves a purpose, based on physical infrastructure and facilities being built out for innovation and entrepreneurship support within the state. Application sections. We start with, there's a total of 7 application sections. The first is going to be the overview. Make sure to pay attention to the important links section in this overview. That's going to have things like the link for the W-9 to submit with the application. It's going to have a link to the website with the grant manual, and then it's going to have a link for the budget template for the budget section of the application as well. And each section that needs something from that will reflect back to it, so you know where to find it. The first section is the organization information section. This is where you're going to put basic information on, the company's name, the contact info, address, just basic information. Pretty straightforward for that one. The next 3 sections, the organizational experience, the proposal requirements, and the budget summary, are going to be the bulk of the application where you will be submitting your written proposal. We'll go into those into more detail in the next slides. But for now, we'll move on to the required documents. This section is where you will upload, as I mentioned before, a W-9, a State of New Mexico W-9. And again, there's a link in the important links section for that. There are also instructions on the first page and the third page on how to properly fill out that W-9. So make sure to pay attention to that. And then if you do decide to receive payments, if awarded through direct deposit, ACH, please upload a picture of a voided check for the organization as well. And then the other part to upload for that section is a letter of good standing with the state of New Mexico. There are instructions on how to do that through the grant manual. So make sure to check out the grant manual and see how to get that letter of good standing. You can do it through your taxation and revenue portal. Pretty straightforward. Takes about 5 minutes to upload in your portal once you request it. So. All right, and then of course, each section, the organizational experience, proposal requirements, and the budget summary requires a PDF upload separate for each of them based on the criteria we ask for, which we will get into now. So again, these sections are going to look very similar to what was in the previous webinar, if you were at that webinar, with some differences in language around physical infrastructure and facilities. So for the organizational experience, you have to describe your organization's experience related to programs and facilities that support, enable, accelerate, or incubate technology innovation through services and facilities used by multiple clients, partners, or stakeholders. You'll also need to provide a short bio for key team members who will help carry out the proposed project. And you'll need to tell us about one success and one challenge your organization has experienced while working on a similar project that supported innovation, entrepreneurship, or technology commercialization. The next section is the proposal requirements. This has 4 different topics to cover. The first is the strategy and approach, where you'll have to discuss first the alignment with one or more of our priority sectors. And again, those are advanced computing, advanced energy, aerospace, and bioscience. And then your demonstrated need and utility for the proposed physical infrastructure. The relevance of the proposed activities to enable innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology commercialization in New Mexico, the identified project goals and outcomes, and the sustainability plan for continued operation, including financial projections. The next section is ecosystem familiarity and engagement. You need to demonstrate your in-depth familiarity with New Mexico's innovation and commercialization ecosystem, including sector-specific stakeholders, if applicable. And then just discuss your relevant experience with startup companies in the state and in the sector, again, if applicable, depending on which sector you are targeting. The third is demonstrated partnerships and collaboration, existing or planned partnerships that enhance project success with letters of commitment from project partners, and then discuss the collaboration with industry, academia, community, or public entities through this proposed infrastructure. The last is going to be the implementation plan. This has 2 extra categories from the previous grant, D and E, to pay attention to. So to start, you need a specific timeline with the milestones that ensure full funding utilization over a 12-month period of performance, including any contingency plans for delays or funding gaps. A governance structure with key personnel named and roles specified that enables the project to execute at speed. evidence of readiness to begin work upon completion. And then the two additional sections is a realistic budget breakdown and justification for all cost categories. Essentially just going into a little bit more depth on the next section where you submit your budget for the proposed infrastructure. And then lastly, a site plan including details on facility readiness and all infrastructure to be built, renovated, or equipped. For the budget summary, as I mentioned previously, there is a budget template that you can get in the overview section under important links. Pretty straightforward. It's just got, line item, description of use, and amount requested. It is really up to you to decide how much you feel you need to include in the description based on, how in depth or how much funding is being put towards each line item. But you'll need to show clear alignment with project tasks, including funds being deployed wholly for physical infrastructure and related costs, and including detailed estimates and quotes. So again, we do not, we don't place for this grant in particular, and for the other grant, the budget is left pretty open as far as eligible costs and expenses, but it does have to go towards, for this grant, being deployed wholly for physical infrastructure and costs related to setting up that physical infrastructure. And then lastly, discuss any secured pending or in-kind funding that will support the project and strengthen its impact. Again, you can request any amount up to 2.5 million, but should only request what is needed to complete the proposed work, and all work must be completed within 12 months of grant agreement execution. If you are awarded funding, this is what you can expect the grant reporting process to look like. You'll need to submit monthly progress and budget updates, including milestones, to the EDD, our department, the Technology and Innovation Office, using a standardized quad chart format that includes A, key activities and milestones achieved, B, partners and ecosystem engagement, C, outcomes and impact metrics, and D, use of funds and budget update. A template for that quad chart will be provided if you are awarded funding in kind of, the onboarding email that we send out. And then at the end of the grant funding, after those 12 months, you'll be required to submit a final report that will be due within 13 months of all parties having signed the grant agreement or grant agreement execution. So you have 12 months to complete the work, and then an additional 13th month to put the final report together to discuss the summary of achievements, the ecosystem contributions, the cumulative impact, the final budget overview, summary of expenditures by category and use of funds, and a final narrative. And again, a template will be provided on the final report and what we expect. And there's also more information on all of these topics in the grant manual itself. This is kind of just a good high-level overview. The timeline. So applications opened on August 11th, 2025. That's 1 week ago from today. And they will close on September 8th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So 3 weeks from today. Applications are open for a month in total, pretty much to the day. And I just want to mention applications close at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time with no exceptions. So you cannot submit, if you have your application open and you're working on it and it hits 5:01, you will not be allowed to submit the application. Or if there's technical issues that you run into trying to submit last second, we also, that won't be what I'm looking for. It won't go through the application process and your application will get stuck. We do not have any exceptions for having technical issues. So on that, make sure you are submitting, at least in the morning in case things come up, or a couple days in advance would really be best. And if any technical issues do come up, go ahead and shoot me an email ASAP and we can get that worked out for you to make sure everything goes smoothly. And then finalists will be notified in late September. In early October, finalist presentations and awardees will be selected. We'll give you ample time from that being notified to the presentation to put together that presentation. We had a question on that in the last webinar. And then in mid-October of 2025, grant agreements will be finalized and executed. So if we're talking 12 months for a period of performance from when the grant agreement is executed, likely that will start in mid-October of 2025, and the period of performance will go until mid-October of 2026, with an extra month until November to get the final report in that 13th month. All right, so that is it for the presentation. Again, if any questions come up, feel free to put them in the chat now and we'll get to those. And if something comes up in the future, feel free to send me an email or call me at the email and number listed here, and we can get those answered for you. But for now, expand this, we can move to any questions people have. And again, things will be very similar kind of on the technical side or general questions about budget for this grant as opposed to the as the previous grant if you were in that. But again, feel free to ask anything. I'm happy to answer it specifically for this grant. All right. Are multiple bids required from contractors, suppliers, vendors for renovation construction or equipment, or will one quote be sufficient? One quote will be sufficient.
Thank you.
We do not require, too much in depth. It's mostly just to give, our department an idea that some due diligence has been done on how much of this is going to cost and that your budget is accurate for what you will need.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then are universities eligible to apply for this grant? Lindsay, correct me if I'm wrong, but yes.
I would say sorry, I couldn't get unmuted there. I would say depending on the eligibility criteria and the way that you write the proposal, it would all be dependent on that.
Okay. Great, thank you. Are organizations that do not currently have a presence in New Mexico but are planning to in the future eligible? So for this grant, no. If you were in our last grant on the Entrepreneurial Programmatic Support Grant, for that funding, yes, companies outside of New Mexico are eligible to apply to set up programmatic support within the state of New Mexico, with the caveat that you need to affirm your ability to receive a New Mexico CRS tax ID code during the period of the grant. For this grant specifically, due to the nature of it being physical infrastructure and the extra kind of due diligence that goes into it, we are limiting this one to companies that are already headquartered in New Mexico with a physical presence. Are costs to hire architects, designers, engineers, or consultants for property development allowed? Yes, they are. So again, we don't have any restrictions on this grant funding. If it is important to get, the expansion built out in which you need a architect, designer, engineer to see what that looks like, then that is eligible to be used.
Great, thanks,
that is
Michael.
eligible for funding out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, so for a lot of the budget things, right, we really don't want to be restrictive with this funding. So if you feel you need those costs specifically to strengthen your application and to strengthen the physical infrastructure and facilities, that'll lead to entrepreneurial support and commercialization, et cetera, then feel free to include anything and make your case for why it is strong. All right, let's see where I leave off. Do partners of the project also need to be headquartered in New Mexico? If they are not the lead applicant, a main organization applying for the application, no. What's important is that the main organization is headquartered in New Mexico with a physical presence, a CRS tax ID, and a federal EIN number. Outside of that, who you decide to partner with or collaborate with is really up to you. They do not have to be inside New Mexico if they provide value add to your application. Are applicants limited to applying for one of these grants? No, you can apply for both. So they're kind of designed to be complementary to each other. And again, the previous grant, the Entrepreneurship Programmatic Support Grant, supports programs and services, whereas the Innovation Hubs grant, this grant provides funds for physical infrastructure and facilities. So at times those can go kind of hand in hand if you want to apply for both to build out a space and then provide some programming for that new facility. By all means, you are welcome to, but it is not a requirement. One or the other, both, whatever you would like to do.
One other point on that one is that they must be two separate applications, though.
Yeah. Thanks, Lindsay. So yeah, there is each of the web pages for each of these has an application link. It'll take you to our general kind of portal for the Technology and Innovation Office. I don't think it's quite updated with the name yet, so I think it still says OSST, but that'll come shortly. And you can find both of these grants listed there. If you are applying to both, you'll need to submit an application for each of them. But again, the applications, the format and everything is the same, so it's probably pretty easy to pick and pull from one to the other. Let's see. Given that the Innovation Hubs grant favors applicants with shovel-ready facilities planned, how should organizations balance the potential for higher capital impact with the increased risk of timeline delays or procurement challenges within a 12-month grant window? Let me reread that one for myself real quick. Okay, so yeah, I can see, given that this is due within a month from when the application opened, on, was it the 11th or last Monday? It does slightly favor having a plan in action already to be able to meet that deadline. That being said, if you're kind of in the process of working with that and have something going, it'll just be important for you to address those timeline delays potentially in your application. Let's see, what section was it specifically that mentions that? So yeah, for the implementation plan where it mentions a specific timeline of milestones, the last part, including contingency plans for delays or funding gaps. Make sure if you do expect, maybe some delays in the application, that those are mentioned, as well as a plan for how to still meet that 12-month period with those delays. So the funding is provided over a 12-month period, again, likely somewhere around like mid-October to mid-October of next year. All funds need to be expensed and all work needs to be completed within those 12 months. So you need to make a strong case for you being able to meet that deadline of all work being completed within those 12 months, even if delays do come up. Can you expand on the requirement for shared access? Is this really only for incubators, shared spaces, entrepreneurship accelerators? What about funding for a private company to construct a test environment to support development of tech that benefits multiple agencies/customers? So it is not a requirement that a company has to be an incubator or an accelerator or have current shared spaces. As long as the proposed physical infrastructure or facility promotes entrepreneurship and commercialization within one of our 4 priority sectors, you'll be eligible to apply and make your case for that physical infrastructure.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, there's no for-profit, nonprofit, any sort of business entity is eligible to apply. There's no restrictions there. Is there a length limit or recommendation for the narrative attachments? There is not. Partially. So we wanted to leave it open because it's really up to you for how much you need to include in this to support your application within those narratives. So, for example, if you are asking for $200,000 out of the 2.5 million, then you may not need as much as someone who is requesting like maybe the full amount of 2.5 million or 1.5 million, right? Keep in mind that it is being reviewed by reviewers and their time is limited. So you want to get everything across as well as you can, but also keep it sweet and to the point. But there's not any recommendations. It's really up for you to decide that. Does equipment, i.e. bioscience apparatus, fall under this grant or only the construction of buildings? Yes, equipment does fall under this grant. I think it's mentioned in a couple places, but even just on this proposal section, for example, a site plan including details on facility readiness and all infrastructure to be built, renovated, or equipped. So equipped would be equipment. If you were planning to build out, if we're talking bioscience, like a wet lab space with some equipment or something for entrepreneurs in that space to use, that would be eligible for this funding. Again, really on physical infrastructure of buildings, renovations, and equipment for this one. Let's see. Is the funding intended to pay a 1-year lease or purchase a property for ongoing use? Could be either. It's really, your proposal and what you see fit. So again, as part of, let's see, where was that? I think it's in the first part. As part of the strategy and approach, the last section E is for a sustainability plan for continued operation. If you have a plan for continued operation of this proposal after the fact, great. But if you're really targeting like a 1-year program in facility to bolster innovation and entrepreneurship within 1 year, then it could be maybe different than sorry, let me read the question. Yeah, so it could be put towards a 1-year lease of building out a facility, ideally with going forward, but it does not have to be ongoing use. Reason being is our funding is appropriated for 1 year, fiscal year 26. That will be going out again through a 12-month period of performance. We do not have at this time funding to promote this kind of operation for future years. So hopefully that might be something in the future, but we do not know at this current time with how the funding is appropriated. Lindsay, I saw you unmute. Did you want to add something or?
Nope, I was just gonna say, just making sure that, that all comes back to the way that you're writing the proposal that is, it is supporting innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology commercialization, just like making your case for what you need for that lease or that property is gonna be part of your proposal as a whole, not just with one part of it.
Hi, this is David. Just want to drill down on this a little bit. So these funds could be used to purchase a property?
These funds could be, as how you're writing the implementation plan and your strategy of approach and how you're doing your proposal, that would all come down into those budget lines. So if you go back to your slide there, Michael, of the equipped slides, like two ahead maybe. Yeah, so your site plan, including facility readiness, infrastructure to be built, renovated, or equipped. So all of that comes back down into your budget and how you write your narrative, David.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
But again, could be used to buy property to build on or to renovate existing property that's purchased, or up to you. Not restrictions on that budget. Do nonprofits have to include NMGRT in the budget for this proposal? So no, that's not included in the budget proposal for these grants. All state funding, including all of our grants given out, a company or business organization will receive a 1099 from the state. As an employee of the state, I am not qualified to give legal advice, so I cannot tell you what to do with that 1099. But I would suggest you talk to a legal or tax professional on what that means for your business and how to account for that 1099 with your organization. But we do not include that within your budget proposal. All right, so it looks like we've gotten to the end of the questions for now. I'm going to stay on for, a little bit longer in case people do have questions that come up. And I did just see another one used real quick. Yeah, let's see. May the funds be used to pay the New Mexico gross receipts tax? No, funds cannot be used to go towards the New Mexico gross receipts tax. They must go towards proposals for the fiscal infrastructure and the actual work being done. Oh, and there are a few in the Q&A.
I was struggling to get it open, Michael. So if the people put it in the Q&A, maybe it would be better just to put it in the chat.
Seems to be working for me.
Okay,
I think,
cool.
as long as there's two. If you are Laurel or Claire, I see yours. If not, then feel free to put them in the chat. Length limit or recommendation for the narrative, we kind of went over that. It's really up to you to decide how long it needs to be to show the proper strength in your proposal and all supporting documentation. Would operating expenses such as overhead and essential staff for an existing hub facility be considered eligible? I noted that these funds are for facilities to be built, renovated, or equipped. So what I'll say on that is, if those staff are contributing to building out physical infrastructure, facilities, equipment, whatever it looks like, then yes. But they have to be directly tied to those activity and work being done. Similar for any costs of the grant outside of just like, direct physical infrastructure costs. All costs have to be directly drawn back to supporting the development of that physical infrastructure. That'll lead to support for entrepreneurship and commercialization, et cetera. So yes, but depending on how you frame it within the application.
To double down on that, Claire, that's the, if you were not on the previous webinar, the operations support is more alignment with the entrepreneurship programmatic support grant. So that recording will be available in a couple of days if you need to rewatch that one.
Yeah. And both recordings will be up tomorrow afternoon. So check for those. Okay, now I think I have gotten through the Q&A and the chat. If there are any last minute questions, feel free to go ahead and ask, but for now, we'll go ahead and end the webinar. Again, I'll be around for about 5 minutes or so afterwards. But I want to thank everybody for joining us, taking the time to be here today. If any questions do come up between now and when the grant closes on September 8th, please feel free to give me an email, and I'll quickly go back to, too far. Feel free to give me an email or call me, and we can get any questions answered for you. And I know there are a couple of you that I think have sent me questions from the previous webinar, and I'll get those back to you shortly. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Michael and Lindsay. Appreciate your help here.
Of course. Thanks for being here, David.
It seriously just took me that long to unmute. If you're still here, David, thanks. It would not unmute.
I'm not muted now. Sometimes it's like slightly different, I think, than where it is normally for this webinar with the extra buttons we have. So sometimes it gets me too.
Well, it was funny. It had like a syncing thing, and I was like, what in the world does that even mean?
Never seen that.
I thought it was going to just crash completely.
All right. Well, I see there's only 2 people left, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar. Again, for the 2 of you left, thanks for being here today. The webinar recording will be updated tomorrow afternoon on our website, so go ahead and check that out if you need any refreshers. But everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Great job.
Thanks, Lindsay.